welcome to Neo Psychology of me, your teacher, Mr. Neo, the channel where I teach online psychology lessons for my wonderful students. Today we're carrying on with the Psychopathology unit and we're looking at Lesson 9, the cognitive approach for treating depression. Let's get started. The cognitive approach to treating depression, CBT. Starter. Medication versus talking therapy. Dealing with the symptoms versus dealing with the root cause. Have you ever had to choose between the two before? If you had, which choice would you prefer? Talking therapy or medication? So here we are in the psychopathology unit. We've done definition of abnormality. We had a look at phobias, depression, OCD. We looked at the behavioural approach. We are now on the cognitive approach for treating depression. Right, 2 learning objectives today. Show comprehension and apply knowledge of the cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT, and then discuss and evaluate CBT. Let's get started. The cognitive approach offers explanations for depression which can then be applied to the treatment of depression. In particular, we are interested in cognitive behavioral therapy, the standard psychological treatment for depression. You are also required specifically to know about the role of challenging irrational thoughts in CBT. So if for whatever reason you suffer from depression, if you go to the doctors, the most likely treatment you will be prescribed is actually cognitive behavioral therapy. In more extreme cases of depression, you may be prescribed antidepressants. Right, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is the most commonly used psychological treatment for depression and a range of other mental health problems. If you see a clinical psychologist for a mental health problem, the chances are you will receive cognitive behavioral therapy. Now, cognitive behavioral therapy has found to be relatively effective. It's not effective for everyone, but on the whole it is found to be quite useful. Now, CBT begins with an assessment in which the therapist and the cognitive behavioral therapist work together to clarify the patient's problems. They jointly identify goals for the therapy and put together a plan to achieve them. One of the central tasks is to identify where there may be a negative or irrational thought that will benefit from challenge. So as we saw last lesson, lesson 8, the cognitive approach to explaining depression, the cognitive approach suggests that people that are more vulnerable to depression have more negative, irrational thoughts, and that's what makes you more prone to depression. CBT's job is to challenge those irrational thoughts. If you start thinking negatively, challenge it and going, well, maybe that's not the correct answer. Maybe there is a more rational explanation, or one that doesn't cause me so much anxiety and stress and depression. CBT then involves working to change negative and irrational thoughts, and finally, put more effective behaviors into place. Some CBT therapists do this using techniques purely from Beck's cognitive therapy, or some rely exclusively on Ellis's rational emotive behavior therapy, but most draw on both. And we're going to have a look at those 2 types of CBT today. Right, so what is CBT? What is cognitive behavioral therapy? Some of you may have experienced cognitive behavioral therapy, some of you may experience it in the future, who knows, okay? Give that a go, please. Cognitive behavioral therapy. It is a method for treating mental disorders based on both what and behavioral. What type, what approach? Cognitive and behavioral techniques. From the cognitive viewpoint, the therapy aims to deal with thinking, such as challenging negative or irrational thoughts. The therapy also includes behavioral techniques such as behavioral activation. Okay? Challenge, thinking hard. Can you draw an image to illustrate the key term? Okay, let's start with Beck's cognitive therapy. There are going to be 2 types of CBT we're looking at, one from Beck and one from Ellis. Okay? Let's look at Beck's cognitive therapy. Cognitive therapy is the application of Beck's cognitive therapy or cognitive theory of depression. The idea behind cognitive therapy is to identify automatic thoughts about the world, the self, and the future. What is that called? When you have negative thoughts about the world, the future, and yourself? This is the negative triad. Once identified, these thoughts must be challenged. This is the central component of the therapy, challenging those irrational thoughts, those irrational beliefs. As well as challenging these thoughts directly, cognitive therapy aims to help patients test the reality of their negative beliefs. They might therefore be set homework, such as to record when they enjoyed an event or when people were nice to them. This is sometimes referred to as the patient as scientist, investigating the reality of their negative beliefs in the way a scientist would. So it's keeping a diary essentially, okay? Sometimes in CBT or from Beck's cognitive therapy, the therapist will ask you to keep a diary, because what happens is when you suffer from depression, you dwell on the negative a lot more. So if you were to ask someone, tell me about your week, because you have this absolutist thinking, this black and white thinking that dwells mostly on the negative, you're likely to say, I didn't have a very good week. It was actually terrible. This and this and this bad happened, okay? However, if you're asked to keep a diary on a daily basis and go, right, how was your day today on Monday? How was it on Tuesday? Wednesday, what good happened? Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There may be 2 or 3 days that bad things happen, but there'll be other days where actually bad things didn't happen. And then after you ask someone at the end of the week, how was your week? They might say, it was actually terrible. Go, right, let's have a look at your diary. Let's have a look at your homework, okay? Let's open it up. Okay, yeah, you had a bad day on Thursday, you had a bad day on Sunday, but actually, the rest of the week was pretty good. So, on the whole, it wasn't as negative as you think, did it? It's about challenging those irrational, negative beliefs. In future sessions, if patients say that no one is nice to them or there is no point in going to events, the therapist can then produce this evidence and use it to prove the patient's statements are incorrect. And that's the central theme of Beck's cognitive therapy, challenging those irrational beliefs. And that can be done through homework. Okay, let's have a look at Ellis's CBT, right? Ellis's CBT is called Ellis's Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, REBT, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy. Now, if you remember, Ellis explained depression through his ABC model. A, activate an event, B, beliefs, and C, consequence of depression. REBT extends on the ABC model to an ABCDE model, where D stands for dispute, so challenging, disputing, and then E for effect. The central technique for REBT is to identify and dispute or challenge those irrational thoughts. For example, a patient might talk about how unlucky they have been or how unfair things seem. An REBT therapist would identify these examples as utopianism and challenge this as an irrational belief. This would involve a vigorous argument. The intended effect is to change the irrational belief and so break the link between the negative life events and depression. So the D is dispute. Again, we are challenging these irrational beliefs. And then E is effect. Hopefully we're going to break the link between these negative life events and depression. This vigorous argument is the hallmark of REBT. Okay? Ellis identified different methods of disputing. For example, empirical argument involves disputing whether there is actual evidence to support the negative belief. Okay, well, you said that your friend ignored you and you think they're mad at you. Have you got any evidence to suggest that they are mad at you? Anything at all? Any text or any message? Okay, and if you go, no, I don't have any evidence actually, but I can just tell. Well, let's challenge that. You can just tell. There's no evidence for it, so maybe it's not the case. And then also logical argument involves disputing whether the negative thoughts logically flow from the facts. Okay, so you said your friend ignored you and therefore you think they're mad at you and you've done something wrong. Have you done anything wrong? Right, is your friend mad at you for any particular reason? Right, let's use some logic here, alright? It's all about disputing those irrational thoughts, challenging that negative mindset. Okay. We've got an application question. AO2. Let's apply our knowledge to this scenario, AO2, okay? Depression is a common but disabling condition. The first line treatment in the National Health Service, the NHS, is CBT. Trina has been diagnosed with depression. Her symptoms include sadness and lethargy. She struggles to get out of bed in the morning. And she is disturbed by automatic thoughts that she is a failure and the future is going to be unhappy. How might a cognitive behavioural therapist tackle Trina's depression? And Trina asks her therapist how useful CBT is. What might the therapist tell her? Okay. How might a cognitive behavioural therapist tackle Trina's depression? A CBT therapist or CB therapist, a cognitive behavioural therapist, might challenge Trina's automatic thoughts of failure and an unhappy future. Okay? This could involve direct argument, and it might also involve reality testing, looking at Trina's week and identifying occasions when she enjoyed herself. They might also engage behavioural activation to help get Trina's activity levels back to normal. Trina asks her therapist how useful is CBT, right? A CBT therapist would probably say that CBT is one of the most effective treatments for depression. They might show us studies like that of Coupiers et al. If they particularly wanted to be fair and balanced, they might add that CBT is not necessarily the most effective treatment, and that the reason it is the first line of defense in the National Health Service is because it is cost effective. Okay? It is cheap. So, CBT, okay? Cognitive behavioural therapy. Identify one thing you learned about CBT. Why do you think learning about it is important? How does it apply in real life? Who is this information useful to? What questions has this raised for you? And that's learning objective 1 done. Show comprehension and apply knowledge of CBT therapy. Let's move on to the next one. Learning objective 2, to be able to discuss and evaluate cognitive behavioural therapy. What are the strengths? What are the limitations of CBT? Right. The strength is it is effective. Okay? There is a large body of evidence to support the effectiveness of CBT for depression. March et al. In 2007 compared the effects of CBT with antidepressant drugs and a combination of the two in 327 adolescents with a main diagnosis of depression. After 36 weeks, 81% of the CBT group, 81% of the antidepressant group, and 86% of the CBT plus antidepressants group were significantly improved. That's quite a high percentage. Thus, CBT emerged as just as effective as medication and helpful alongside medication. So research has shown that CBT is actually just as effective as medication. And on a side note, what they found is that exercise can also be just as effective as medication and CBT therapy. And what has been found is a combination of them can be even more effective. This suggests that there is good case for making CBT the first choice of treatment in public health care systems like the National Health Service, like our NHS. And it typically is. If you go to your doctors and you tell them some of your symptoms and they diagnose you with depression, they are likely to prescribe you with CBT therapy. Unfortunately, we've got a bit of a crisis in the NHS at the moment where there isn't as much support for those with mental disorders, so you may have to wait a little while to get your CBT, but that's the way it is, unfortunately. Is this a strength or a weakness? It is a strength. It shows how effective CBT is, and it is relatively effective, even on its own, 81%. But it's found that a combination of both CBT and antidepressants can work 86% of the time. However, CBT may not work for the most severe cases. In some cases, depression can be so severe that patients cannot motivate themselves to engage with the hard cognitive work of CBT. They may not even be able to pay attention to what is happening in a session. Where this is the case, it is possible to treat patients with antidepressant medication and commence CBT when they are more alert and motivated. Although it is possible to work around this by using medication, this is a limitation of CBT, because it means CBT cannot be used as the sole treatment for all cases of depression. So if you think about those that are suffering from depression, they're likely to suffer from lethargy, feeling tired, not being bothered, right? And imagine the process that you have to do to get a CBT therapist. It's quite an arduous process, right? Got to call up the doctor, say, oh, hi there, I need to book an appointment to get a diagnosis for my depression. Oh, all the bookings are gone. I've got to call back tomorrow morning. Okay, what time? 7 o'clock. I'm probably not up at that point, right? Right, hi there, I need to book an appointment, 7 o'clock. Okay, fine, get there, right? Got to wake up early, go to my appointment, right? Be bothered, get there, see the doctor, tell them what's going on. They give me a diagnosis of depression, they tell me, I'll give you CBT, alright? Then I've got to go and book my CBT, I've got to go and meet my therapist. I'm probably not motivated enough to do all of this. It's too difficult. It's difficult on my own, let alone when I've got depression, right? So CBT may not be appropriate for more severe cases of depression. When that is the case, they might start people off on antidepressants to make them feel more motivated and less lethargic so they can engage with the CBT therapy. And then finally, success may be due to the therapist-patient relationship. Rosenzweig suggested that the differences between different methods of psychotherapy might actually be quite small. All psychotherapies share one essential ingredient, the therapist-patient relationship. It may be the quality of this relationship that determines success rather than any particular technique that it used. Many comparative reviews, like Leborski et al. 2002, find very small differences, which supports the view that simply having an opportunity to talk to someone who will listen could be what matters most. So essentially what it's saying is, it doesn't even matter. As long as you're getting a good relationship and someone to talk to, it should be fine. So, can you summarize each evaluative point into exactly 10 words for us, please? Challenge yourself. Can you think of any further criticisms of your own using the Grave and Scout technique? If you're not sure what those are, have a look at the front of your booklets. And that's the evaluation. Okay? To be able to discuss and evaluate cognitive behavioural therapy, we've done it. Let's move on to the plenary. What have I got? Okay, a local Kingston clinic treats depressed individuals using CBT. Patients are referred to the clinic by their GP. One GP wants to produce a leaflet to give to patients being referred to the clinic. What I want you to do is create a leaflet for the clinic to be given to potential patients. Consider, what may patients worry about? What are the potential problems or risks involved with CBT? Why is CBT used in the treatment of depression? What should a patient expect if they participate in CBT? What are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of CBT over antidepressant medication? And that was today's lesson. That was lesson 9, the cognitive approach for treating depression. Next lesson is lesson 10, the biological approach to explaining OCD. And there we go. We've done it. Well done, my neo-psychologists. Great work today. I've been Mr. Neo. God bless and peace.
I'm feeling like Will. I feel like a prince. I'm feeling myself. I'm loaded with bills. Cause I wasn't blessed with no Uncle Phil. Don't know how it feels. I wanted to flex. They told me to chill. I'm making a flip. My life is a flick. Now load up the film.